Let's hone in on one of the big stories developing just yesterday. A unanimous decision by the highest court in South Africa has ruled that former President Jacob Zuma must obey a summons to appear before the state capture inquiry. The ruling also clarified that he does not have the right to remain silent, although, like other witnesses, he does retain the right not to incriminate himself. Now, Zuma snubbed the commission last year when he walked out of the hearings without permission and challenged Chairperson Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo to respond however he deemed appropriate. Let's unpack the story for you, this decision by the Constitutional Court just yesterday. The Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution was admitted as friends of the court in this case, and its Executive Secretary Lawson Naidoo joins us now from Cape Town. Lawson, good morning. It's great to have you with us this Friday morning. An incredible decision by the Constitutional Court. Not so much incredible, but pretty strongly worded in terms of the court, particularly honing in on the fact that the president is violating the directives that he himself set up in his time as president.
Indeed, Michelle, good morning. Yes, there were some strong words in yesterday's judgment, and they weren't reserved exclusively for Mr. Zuma.
Yeah.
The court also had some strong words for the Judicial Commission of Inquiry itself, asking the very pertinent question as to why the commission had not issued a summons much earlier against former President Zuma, pointing out the fact that, in their opinion, the commission had treated Mr. Zuma with kid gloves, if you like, that they treated him with a level of deference, and that forced them to come to the court at the 11th hour, as it were, with an urgent application, with the clock ticking, that the commission is now seeking to get Mr. Zuma's participation in the commission. But having said that, the commission did go out of its way, I think, to say that Mr. Zuma's conduct, which they described in the judgment, they described as reprehensible, as a total failure of accountability by a former head of state, someone who, as you say, was responsible for establishing the commission, issuing its regulations and directives, and is now seeking to flout those. So the court took a dim view of Mr. Zuma's conduct.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hone in on that issue that you've just mentioned now, the fact that the Constitutional Court made that statement around how the inquiry has treated the former president, why the summons was issued at such late notice. And I want to hone in on the issue around self-incrimination, Lawson, because this is something that the Constitutional Court has also highlighted that, Mr. Zuma, like all other witnesses, has a right against self-incrimination. That takes us back to Dudu Myeni when she was joining or giving her testimony via a video link. She said she was in quarantine at the time. Pretty much every question she was asked, she used the issue of self-incrimination that she could, as an excuse for why she couldn't answer.
Indeed, and this was the issue that that CASAC brought before the Constitutional Court. We argued specifically that witnesses before a commission of inquiry do not enjoy the right against self-incrimination. It would undermine the very purpose of a commission of inquiry, which is a truth-seeking exercise. The court unfortunately disagreed with us, and regrettably we were not given an opportunity to present oral argument to the court because this matter was heard urgently on the 29th of December. But having said that, I think what is important in what the court has clarified yesterday is that in regard to the right against self-incrimination, it's not a blanket right in the way that it was claimed by Dudu Myeni, for example, who refused to answer the most basic and inconsequential of questions on the basis of a concern that she might incriminate herself.
And got away with it, Lawson.
And was allowed to get away with it, Michelle, by the Commission of Inquiry. So this clarification by the Constitutional Court yesterday is critically important. So if Mr. Zuma goes to the Commission or any other witness and seeks to claim this right against self-incrimination, they have to provide a justification as to why an answer to a specific question may lead to them incriminating themselves. And the presiding officer, in this case, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, will have to make a decision as to whether that argument is valid or not, and issue a direction as to whether the witness is then required to answer the question or whether they have put forward sufficient cause as to why they might incriminate themselves and be excused from answering that question. So in our opinion, that's a very important clarification of the issue, and therefore we will hopefully never see the repeat of the kind of Dudu circus again at the Commission of Inquiry.
Do you reckon, this clarification by the Constitutional Court means we will get the answers to some of the big questions that we still have? And I suppose a follow-on question as it relates to the former SAA board chairperson, Dudu, might she be called back to the inquiry?
Well, on the second point, that's a matter that the Commission will have to determine. On the former point, despite the legal clarity provided by the Constitutional Court yesterday, Michelle, we know that it's not going to be plain sailing if and when Mr. Zuma appears before the Commission again. He will try and seek the protection of this right against self-incrimination at every possible opportunity. We know that from his past conduct. But interestingly, the court in its judgment yesterday pointed out that, for example, in relation to the allegations that members of cabinet were appointed by interests outside of the president, such as the Gupta family and so on, the court said, well, as the president at the time, Mr. Zuma, you're the only person that can answer to those issues because the power resided in you. So on a pertinent question like that, I cannot see Justice Zondo granting any sort of right of against self-incrimination if Mr. Zuma seeks to not want to answer such a question, because there is no other person that can provide the answer to that question.
Lawson, pretty stunning, the president's treatment of the inquiry to date, isn't it? I mean, walking out of the commission last year without notifying anyone, not least the Deputy Chief Justice who is chairing the inquiry, but making it pretty clear that he will not comply with the processes of this inquiry, even going so far as to pretty much dare the chairperson to take whatever steps he deems necessary. Are you surprised, given the history of Jacob Zuma's time in our country's courts?
Not at all. And I think, the court yesterday took a very dim view of this. It described Mr. Zuma's conduct as reprehensible. That's a very strong word for any court to use, let alone the Constitutional Court, and let alone against a former head of state. So that's a really damning indictment of Mr. Zuma's, disregard, contempt for the Commission of Inquiry, for his walkout in November last year, and the general manner in which he has simply ignored directives issued by the Commission, ignored agreements that were reached between his legal team and that of the Commission to provide affidavits by certain dates and so on. So it's quite clear that Mr. Zuma has absolutely no intention of cooperating with the Commission. And despite yesterday's judgment, it's not going to be easy to extricate any information from him, even if he appears before the Commission in the middle of February, as his next summons requires him to do so.
Well, let's talk about that. His next steps here. We know that the former president is hardly ever out of moves. Could he claim, and I suppose these are the reasons that he could claim the basis that he can't appear before the inquiry, that he's incapacitated, physically unable to appear. These are reasons he's used in the past as well. This is probably going to be his next move.
Well, those are possibilities, and there may well be some other surprises up his sleeve that we're unaware of at this stage, Michelle. But what we certainly know, and the former president treated the Constitutional Court with disdain. He refused to participate in the proceedings when this urgent application was brought by the Commission of Inquiry, a matter which the court dealt with urgently, heard the matter on the 29th of December in the middle of the holidays, issued a judgment yesterday, just a month later. And, Mr. Zuma has shown no interest in the matter, and he will use whatever means at his disposal that he thinks he can get away with to try and avoid answering questions.
Strange for someone who says that he wants to have his day in court, wants to give his side of the story?
Well, I think that was a comment he made many, many years ago, and he spent every day since then trying to avoid having his day in court.
Lawson Naidoo, thanks very much for your time, as always, here on the AM Report. He's the Legal Secretary for the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, as we continue to unpack that developing story for you.